Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffiths. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. This is where top performers share their secrets to help you achieve your personal and your professional goals. I am your host, Denise Griffiths, and together with my amazing guests, we bring you inspiring and actionable insights to take your life and your business to the next level. Excuse me. Ranked in the top 2% globally, this podcast really is a must listen. So whether you are tuning in for entrepreneurial tips, career advice, or personal development strategies, get ready to turn inspiration into action, challenges into triumphs, and dreams into reality. And on today's show, we are talking about, seriously, one of my favorite topics, podcasting, with my guest, Anastasia Lipske. Now, she was my guest earlier this week, where we uncovered key strategies for maximizing marketing impact through public speaking and podcast guesting. And people say, well, podcasting is not public speaking. Oh, yes, it is. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So today we invite you to discover the secrets to becoming a highly sought after podcast guest, a high value guest, in fact, as we explore effective self-presentation strategies, optimal interview practices, and the art of earning host admirations and referrals. I can't even stress how important that is. It really is. Because if we consider you a high value guest, we're going to share you. We want you to get your voice heard. So welcome back to Your Partner in Success Radio, Anastasia. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. It is a pleasure. And I loved that you used the word admiration, because I often refer to the steps that a person can take to be the type of guest that a host will love and fall in love with, right? But it is about admiration because it does make a difference. And each and every one of you hosts, even if you have a standard procedure that you go through with every single episode that you do, I do find, we are human, and relationships matter, and I do find that hosts tend to go that little extra mile sometimes when it is a guest that has been the type of guest that has fully given of themselves. It's not even just about how amazing the interview was, but also how supportive the guest was in the entire process, from the beginning all the way through to the actual recording. And then, of course, what's going to happen afterwards. So all of that can help bring in an admiration, if you will, that's going to go far, so that that host is more likely to remember you as well. So there's just so many reasons to do it. Besides, it's just the right thing to do, is to be kind and supportive and give back on all sides.
It is. And, to that point, to the point you just made, I will, I'll post something on Facebook or LinkedIn. He's like, this is how much I love my clients. And I'll take a screenshot. You're in one of my recent screenshots where you had left this glowing review on my podcast. And then again on Apple, Apple iTunes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because it used to be called iTunes and now
I
it's Apple
know.
Podcasts, and it gets so confusing because
It is
some things are still iTunes, and yeah, Apple
right.
iTunes Podcast.
But what will happen is, and I invite people to do this. In fact, I encourage it. If you see me tagging you on something, just leave a message. Oh, thank you, Denise, blah, 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 blah. I will instantly go find your podcast and post it again.
Wow.
Because, it's reciprocity, right?
Exactly.
So before we get too far into the weeds here, let's recap the last discussion we had.
Mm-hmm.
Your audience can easily follow along, and then we'll go into what we really are talking about today, which is how to be a high value guest. Write that down. High
Yes,
value guest.
exactly.
Okay, go.
Okay, so last week, or not last week, just earlier this week, we were talking a lot about just the general philosophy, if you will, of podcast guesting, the benefits, the values. And so for anyone who is hearing this right now, if you have not heard the previous episode, I would recommend that you stop and listen to that completely and then come back to this. And I like to think of it as the fact that even though it was like an organic conversation and we didn't even really know which direction we were going to go in, I look at that as us having tilled the soil so that we were getting it ready for people to then plant the seeds and grow their business, their marketing, their visibility, everything using podcast guesting and speaking. And I'm going to refer to podcasting more because we are on a podcast, and but almost everything that I'm talking about, so much of it is applicable to speaking to grow your business as well. But we tilled the soil a few days ago with our previous episode about the why and about the need for you to have clarity around who you want to get in front of. Because if a person decides that they want to use guesting as a marketing strategy, and it is a strategy, there is a lot built around that in order for it to be effective. Just showing up on any mamby-pamby pop podcast and talking about anything that you know about, that is not going to get you the results that you're looking for. You need to be strategic. So we covered all of that as to the reason why and who your target audience is, that avatar, who you really want to get in front of. And then today we can talk a little bit more about how to find those shows, different tips and techniques and tools that I use that are used by many, as well as how to be the type of guest that is going to get that admiration from a host and be referred more or invited back, and then how to get the most out of each and every interview. So if you stick with us to the end here, I hope we can definitely cover quite a few of those things. So that's a little bit of a recap. Denise, do you have a preference as to where you want us to start in those various things that we hope to cover today?
I really don't. I mean, you covered it's kind of 3 points there, and you covered it, which is A, B, C. The first thing that came to mind, though, is if you are a podcast guest or want to become a podcast guest and you're new at it, it's not a matter of going to, my website or LinkedIn and saying, "Hey, Denise, I want to be on your podcast."
Yeah.
Why? So you need to be able to craft a concise and engaging introduction and send it to the right person. I got one
Yes.
the other day on LinkedIn that said, "I love your show." It turned out it was a cooking show. Well, I love to cook, but I don't have a podcast about that. So be careful how you approach people, because if you start out on the wrong foot, we're going to remember it. We really are. It's like,
Oh,
do your homework.
absolutely. It's in just yesterday, I I got a LinkedIn message from someone that I connected with quite some time ago that he's a speaker. And we also talked a little bit at the end of our talk on Monday. We were covering at the end a little bit of a difference when a speaker is approaching podcasts and they're coming from the speaking world. They might have a different approach and not realize that it needs to be done a little differently for podcast hosts. But this particular person that I was already connected with, but I hadn't heard from him in ages, reaches out to me and wants to be on my show. And I don't even have a show.
I know. See,
So
your
my
home.
I was like, dude, do you have any idea how much you are going to alienate yourself from hosts right from the get-go if you don't do your due diligence and research the show and listen to it before you offer yourself? Like, I don't even have a podcast and you're offering yourself to me. So the one thing I'm going to say that I probably will say everything is so important because it is, but oh my gosh, I want everyone to take this in and understand and put yourself in the shoes of the host. Imagine that you are putting on a podcast. And it's interesting. I had a conversation with someone just yesterday, and I was sharing with him the reason why I would never do a podcast. And I don't want to go through the amount of work that you go through, Denise.
It's a lot of
I
work.
really don't. And I don't think people realize how much is involved, in particular if it's a high caliber show. because, we get this impression that, oh, all you need is Podbean and an iPhone and you can sit in your car and you've got a podcast. Okay, to a certain extent, yes, that's true. But if you want it to be a successful podcast, in particular in the business world, that is garnering clients and visibility and helping you to build influence, it needs to be done right. So every host is doing it because they have their own need, desire to have that visibility for their show. They're building community, week after week or month after month or day after day, depending upon how often they release their shows. But they're building their community over time, and it's a lot of work that goes into it. And podcast hosts get used and abused all the time by people who they just want to show up on shows, and they'll try this spray and pray model. They'll get a template, they'll send it out to every podcast host they can find out there without even making certain that they're a match. So again, we talk a little bit about that in the previous episode, where we go into how you can feel into it to make sure you're a good match. But now let's talk about what you do when you know you're a good match, at least you feel that you are, and how do you present yourself in such a way to that host to honor them and to increase your chances of them saying yes. So number one, respect them, acknowledge the fact that they put a lot of time and effort into creating this platform that you may have the opportunity to use to get your voice out there. So the least you can do is put some time and effort into making certain that you're a good fit to begin with, so you don't waste their time. Time is the one thing we can never get back, and we want to respect everybody's time. So you start out by making certain that you are a good fit and that you can bring value to those listeners. At the end of the day, every host, all they want to do is increase their subscribers, their listens, their downloads, their reviews on Apple, etc. These are all things that if you can help them with that by bringing in your expertise, your passion, your experience, and present it in a way that their listeners are going to stay on that episode and listen until the very end, and that you are going to share it. You're going to be an active partner in this experience. If you can help them to understand the value that you bring right from the get-go, then you're golden. So when you are vetting a show, of course, you're going to want to listen, you're going to want to make sure you're a good fit, etc. But pay attention also to what the host says as to how they want to be approached. Now, not all hosts make this clear. So you can look at their website, you can look at, go into various channels and see where they're listed, look at their show notes from previous episodes. You can find them on LinkedIn, various social channels. Be looking for anything where they say, hey, if you're interested in being a guest, do this. So sometimes they'll have a form. Sometimes they'll have it in their contacts. So when you're on a website, often you have multiple tabs that you can go into. Look through all of them until you see whether they do or do not give instructions as to how to approach them. It has got to be so frustrating to a host that says, I've got a form, or here's the email to use to reach out to me if you want to be a guest. But people come in and they reach out to you in other ways. And that just tells you as a host right off the bat, clearly they did not vet my show, because it says right there that I've got a form. It says right there that they emailed this particular email, and here they are reaching out to me in this other manner. So that is one of the quickest ways to turn someone off, is to not follow instructions. It's like that test that we had often in class where, it's that long test, and at the very end it says, if you get to this bottom question, you don't have to do the test. Same thing. Okay. So it's like that same thing. Just know that you're in essence being tested just by how you show up right to begin with. I will tell you, I myself, as a booking agent and as someone who I obviously guest on shows myself, I personally would rather not do a form, because I feel like it locks me in sometimes. But I understand the reason that a host would want to have a form sometimes. So I'm going to honor whatever it is that they're requesting. If you do not find any way to contact that host, sometimes hosts do not make it easy. A, they might have too many inquiries and they don't want to make it easy. Or B, they just aren't realizing that they're not putting it out there to make it, clear for people. Get creative. Some of the ways that I will connect with people, and even if I have their email, even if they have a form that I submit, I still always try to reach out and connect with that host personally, somehow, some way, so that I can stand out a little more and I can start to develop that relationship. So before you even send the inquiry, if it's a show you really want to get on, get to know that host and what they're all about. LinkedIn, now that's the only social sandbox I play in, but many podcast hosts do have a presence on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you can reach out to connect with them directly. Now, never send a LinkedIn request without saying why you want to connect with them. Now, there's the word on the street is LinkedIn might be changing this, and they might not allow everybody to always send a note with their inquiry to connect. I don't know if that's going to happen for sure, but if so, that's going to change this landscape a bit. But as much as you can, be personalized. And you want to just say, make sure you have listened. Don't ever lie. Please, people, do not lie. Don't say you've listened to their show. Don't say you're a fan of their show if you don't know anything about it and you haven't listened, okay? Be honest. But hopefully you've listened and you could say, I've listened to your show. I really am, aligned with what it's about. I would love to know what your vetting process is. Or if they have a form, you could say, I've just submitted a form, but I wanted to reach out to connect with you personally. Anything that you can say to give them a reason to want to connect with you. Go to their profile on LinkedIn and click the notification bell at the top. There's a bell that you can click, and that will start adding anything that that person does into your notifications feed on LinkedIn. I go into my feed multiple times a day, okay, because I'm on LinkedIn a lot. But even if you're not, maybe just once a day, you go in and look at the notifications, and then you can see when that host has shared maybe a previous episode, or maybe they've shared something else. And then in that process, you can engage. You can like and comment on those posts so that they start seeing your image, your name, and they start seeing that you're active on LinkedIn and that you're a giver. So do that as a way to connect with them. Now, the process of sending, say, an email, and this is where you have the most flexibility to really present yourself in a way that the host is more likely to say yes. If you are able to email them your proposal, my agency, we don't call them pitches. I don't like the word pitch. We propose our clients because this is again relationship marketing. So the very first thing you want to do in the beginning is you want to, in that paragraph that introduces yourself, you're going to want to, in essence, share what's in it for them, how you can be of value. If you can pull out anything that you heard in a previous episode and be very specific, include that. And I believe I've covered some of this in the previous episode. I'm on a lot of podcasts, so I don't know if I'm repeating myself, but it would not hurt for you to hear this again. In that process, you are really sharing a little bit about why you're of value. Then you could share more about yourself and why you are a credible resource to be speaking on that. Share all those details, but don't make it too long. If you can provide extra things that they can maybe click on if they really want to go deep, or attach a one sheet, all of that you can do in that email. But make certain you're coming from the viewpoint that you're going to bless them, and also let them know what your standard process is for how you share any episode that you've been on, whether you're going to share it on socials, maybe what your reach is. If you have high numbers, if you don't, then don't mention the numbers. But let them know, I'm going to put you in my newsletter. I'm going to share about you on LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, etc., so that the host knows that you're going to be engaged. So that's going to be one of the most important things, is you want to make certain that they know that you're going to be of value to them. And I always suggest, say, I really do feel that I'm aligned. But at the end of the day, it is your show. And I fully recognize that you may not be feeling it. And if so, that's okay. Will you please let me know either way? So let you kind of take that pressure off a host because it's hard for a host to decline people sometimes. They might really like them, they like their approach, but they know that they're still not really a good fit for what they're envisioning their show is going to be covering. So that's the general idea of the approach. Now, I thought I would go into a little bit about how to find some shows that you're a good fit for. Does this sound like a good time to switch into that, or do you have any questions, Denise?
It does, but I have one comment on every, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing everything because I'm ticking it in my head like, yep, yep, yep. People who get my attention do everything that you just said. They're referencing a podcast. They have listened. They may even know the person that I interviewed, which is also a plus.
Yes, yes.
Just let me know who you are. The worst thing you can do, though, and this does happen, so I'll get mostly on LinkedIn, and I do have a forum, and my forum is not particularly difficult, but it tells me who you are, where I can go find you.
Right.
Before I even spend any real time going yes or no. So my form is important, but it, and this happened the other day, which is why it's fresh in my mind. I got a kind of a cute, inquiry from LinkedIn. And this guy just absolutely made it clear. I just want to get on podcasts to increase my reach. Basically, he wants to sell his widget. No,
Mm-hmm.
I am not your billboard.
Right.
Oh, so be careful how you approach us. If you are making it clear that you're just going to jump on our show and it's going to be you, we're going to leave you alone.
Yeah. Yeah. This is relationship marketing. And in our previous episode, we went into that even deeper because it is about blessing people. That I feel like that's the space that I come from, is how can I be of service? How can I be of service to you, Denise, as a guest? I want to make certain that I'm being of service to you. How can I be of service to you right now, you who are listening? Can I provide enough value that's going to leave you at the end of this feeling like your time was well spent? And that's important because, again, you can't get your time back. You might listen to the very end, and if at the end of that you don't feel like it was worth your time, I feel like I've let you down. And that's important to me. So
Yep.
I want to point out a few things, some I feel mistakes that people make when they are vetting shows, when they put too much attention on metrics. So, first off, when it comes to things like listeners, downloads, subscribers, blah, 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 we as a potential guest, we're never really going to know that. Now, some shows, they're very public about it, and that's fine. And honestly, I'm not even certain I 100% can trust any number that anybody gets because I'm not certain
Yeah,
they're all accurate, right?
they're not. So
Okay.
just ignore those. Listen, our RS feeds go everywhere. I'm even an Audible of all places. I never saw that coming. We have no means of gathering all of those and finding out what our true downloads are. And I'll be honest with you, in the 16 years that I've been doing this, I've only had maybe two people say, well, what are your downloads?
Hmm.
That's none of your business. Number two,
Yes.
I'm ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts in the world. Figure it out. And
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
mean to sound that cranky, but there really are no real numbers that I've ever found out. And to be honest with you, I don't care.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get to meet the darndest people, wonderful people from all over the world. That's what I care about.
Exactly. No, I love it. I love it. And that's why you have a really high caliber show because your focus is on providing content that's of value.
Mm.
So those numbers don't really matter. Now, the other area where people look is they look at Apple reviews. Now, there are a lot of opinions on this, and I'm going to share mine. My opinion is that Apple reviews do matter. And the reason why I'm pulling out Apple is because Apple is kind of the gold standard. They have the best and easiest system for people to do reviews and see reviews. Far better than any other platform that's out there. And it's also kind of what we've gotten used to. And it's not unlike, for me, if I go to a store and I'm looking at something and I'm thinking, do I want to buy this? I'll go on Amazon, I'll look at the reviews, and it gives me a general idea as to whether people think that it's a good product or not. We as human beings have been trained to look at reviews for everything, everything, everything. So it's human nature for us to still pay attention to those. But I want to make it clear to everybody that not every host puts time and effort into an Apple review. So you can have a really great show with zero or very few Apple reviews. Others put too much. And I think we went into this also. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but I want you to be clear that the Apple reviews is just one of the many metrics to look at. Now, I'm going to tell you, human beings, we like them. So if you're listening and you're getting anything of value from this right now, I'm going to ask you to do a solid and do a review for Denise, please, because it does help. Now, if you're a guest and you are on her show, the more Apple reviews that come in, the more people might be enticed to listen to it, the more likely you could be heard years after the fact. And we talked about that last episode as well. So the evergreen factor. So do a review. One of the things you want to make sure as a guest is that you do a review before you even reach out to that host. That's the ideal way to do it. Now, you can look at those. The other thing you want to look at before you decide to be a guest is, how is that show showing up? How are they displaying their guests? There are some shows you look at their cover art and they don't even have a picture of the guest. That tells me that, well, it might be part of it could have to do with just, I don't want to say laziness, but maybe not a time bandwidth that they don't want to put the time into swapping out the images every single episode. So there could be that, but they're shooting themselves in the foot, because when a person comes into a podcast and all the cover art for every previous episode is just the host, or the host is way big and the guest is way small, that basically screams, I care more about myself as a host than I do about my guest. So you want to look at that. That's important.
Honestly, and I'm glad you said that, because as a host, it is not about me. In fact, I'm invisible on the internet. There are no pictures of me on the internet. Never have been, never will be. It's all about my guests. Every bit of what I do with this podcast is about you, the guest. It's not about me. I'm just here listening.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important. So it's important that people look at those things, but you take it with a grain of salt. I don't want someone to toss a show as a possible option just because they're doing that. Okay.
Gotcha.
These are just things to look at when you are vetting a show. The other thing, when you look at Apple Podcasts, one of the things I like about looking at them when I'm vetting a show is the fact that they show 10 of the last episodes and they have a title and 3 lines of text. Now, as a host, if you are a host, that is precious real estate. People will decide whether they want to listen to your show or not based on how you have your description off on the left side below your cover art, and whether that is clear on who the audience is and what the show is about, so that a person can decide whether they want to listen to it or they're a good match as a guest. Okay, so that's important. Those lines of descriptive text are important. I have seen shows where they might have a name of the guest, but all 3 lines is the same selling text about the guest. I mean, about the host. It's their spiel about, we are the best, blah, blah, blah. You can do this with us and you can do that with us, and we guarantee you this. They'll fill up every single one of those descriptive texts because I think they don't know what they're doing. I think that that's something they dropped at the top of their text for the descriptive text that they're throwing into their podcast description, not realizing that they're wiping out any information about what that particular episode is about. So you want to make sure. So I'm now speaking also to hosts, because I work with hosts as well. make certain that precious real estate, that descriptive text gives a compelling reason to the person reading it that they're going to want to listen to that particular episode. They need to know what's behind that door, what's behind that curtain. You get those 3 lines. That's enough to give them a taste that they're excited about it. It's like, oh, I want to hear this episode. You need to make certain that you have the guest name in it. Ideally, the guest name is also in the title. And you know what, Denise? I got to say right now, I'm not remembering how you show up that way, but I'm just going to keep speaking my truth. So,
I always, the guest name is always in the title.
okay, I'm not surprised
Not
because
about me, it's about
you get so much right. So having that guest name and kind of what it's about in that title, because that's the first thing people see, it's the bigger font, and then below, again, the guest name and what you're talking about. So as a guest, now you're looking at that, and you want to make certain that you kind of line up, that you fit in with these 10 most recent guests. Do you have something that kind of is in alignment with the types of things that they're talking about? So you want to look at that also, like, is this a show that is, sharing their guest content well enough that I want to be involved in it? That's an important thing to look at. Go to their socials. How are they sharing? Are they sharing every episode? Are they talking about what's in the episode? Or is it just like a quick share and they don't even tag the guest? So this is something else. I can't remember if we talked about this, but you want to make certain that you tag the guest so that the guest knows that the post is out there and can engage. And engagement is important. So now we're going to kind of go back into that. How do I have this? Well, I refer to it as Marmie's etiquette because my granddaughters call me Marmie. This etiquette about how to be that type of guest that people love, hosts will love. So engagement is going to be really important. You want to make certain that you are engaging with that host the moment that they share it and that you're going to share it and you tag the host so the host can then engage, because that's where the magic happens. That's where the visibility happens. And y'all, if you are not sharing it on social media and engaging with each and every post, like liking it, commenting it, then when they comment, you comment back, you like it, etc. If you're not doing that, you might as well stop, because you're not going to get the visibility, and that's what this is all about. So engage as much as you possibly can. So look at, how is the host showing up? Is the host just sharing these things and not tagging the guest or not engaging themselves? Because
right.
I see that all the time.
And if the guest has a business as you do, excuse
Hmm.
me, on LinkedIn, I went and made sure that I tagged you, I tagged your business, and I will do this. And I suspect this is why a lot of people do want to come on my show. Excuse me, I need to cough. I will, if you're, and I interview a lot of authors, a lot, a lot. I've got hundreds of books in here and they're all gifts. I will make sure that you can find their book on Amazon.
Yes.
I make a review, Amazon and Goodreads. Those go out. I am so grateful for the quality of my guests and the fascinating conversations
Yeah.
I have with my guests. I'll do anything I can to promote them. And it's not a one and done. And this is important. So find out as a guest, if you see something pop up once, but it never pops up again, and you're going to have to do a little bit of looking.
Hmm.
But if they're not promoting you over and over again over time, I'm not saying every week you post the same thing, but
Right.
I mean, I'm known to post something that, Larry Winget, one of my favorite people, did an interview with him somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago. I just posted it again last week.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
We have to give you the love that you are giving us.
Hmm. So true. So true. One thing I will say, I love that you mentioned tagging the business as well. Um, this is a little handy dandy tip to help anybody who is not aware of this. And again, I only play in LinkedIn, so I'm only speaking LinkedIn right now. But what I will do when I am doing a post and I'm sharing an episode that I've been on or one of my clients, I tag the host, but then it's not always an easy thing to know if that host has a page for their podcast specifically, and or a page for their business, because not everybody does. So what I'll usually do is I'll open a second window on LinkedIn, and I'll go to the profile of that host, and I look down in their experience area. So once you get to the experience, you'll have each category that a person is listing, either from previous things that they've done, or maybe they're doing multiple things. If you look to the left of the description and there is a logo, as opposed to it being that grayish box that they have, if it's a grayed out box and they're talking about their show or their business or whatever, then they don't have a page. But if they have a logo, there's an image to the left of that experience that's being described right there, then you know that there is a page attached to it. Pay attention to what it's named. And then when you start the @ you can start to type in that name. So sometimes I work with a host that they have a business page and they have a page dedicated on LinkedIn to their podcast. So if that were the case with you, and I can't remember, Denise, because I'm not going to go look it up right now, but
I don't, but I'm going to.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest, by the way, to a host that you have a dedicated experience page of you as a host. Treat it as a business, and you have that, even if you don't use it. Honestly, I don't do anything with my business page on LinkedIn, to be completely honest. And I even tell people that, like when they come to my business page, it says, by the way, I'm not doing anything here. So find me personally, let's connect. But you can have that page, and then it's attached, and it makes it so much easier for people to be able to draw attention to that, and you can tag things and spotlight them, etc. So it's more powerful. But I will, like, let's say you had a business page and you had a podcast page. So when people are looking at your profile, they're seeing your experience, they see a logo to the left of each of those categories. Then when I am sharing it, I would be saying, this was such an amazing conversation that I had with @ Denise Griffiths, okay? And host of the amazing @ the, your partner in success radio podcast, whatever. And she is the owner of @ and then the business name, etc. Like, I literally would tag each of them in that. It becomes a more robust space, and it makes it clear to everybody, because you can see when you're looking at LinkedIn, when it's a link behind an actual position on LinkedIn, and they're more likely to click on it. So it's an easy thing to find. But I was struggling with this for the longest time before I finally figured this out. So I hope there's at least one person out there that did not know this, that now you can take that quick look at a profile. If there's no picture to the left of that experience description, then they don't have a dedicated page to that podcast or to that business. And therefore, you don't need to bother tagging it. But if they do, tag it. And you can always throw in additional links. Like if it is an author, you can throw in a link to their book on Amazon or on Goodreads or whatever. So it's robust. There's so much that we could do with each and every one of those little shares that we do. So that's going to be an important part of it, is that engagement and utilizing it in a way that a host is going to be happy, but also the word gets spread. There's more visibility. When you tag someone, then their followers have the opportunity to see your posts. And I witness this every day. Even when I tag someone I'm not connected with. And by the way, you do not need to be connected with a person in order to tag them. That's another misunderstanding that people have. So I tag strangers all the time because I want to give credit where credit is due. So like, I just shared something on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and it was a great report that this guy wrote, Dan Meisner, forgetting the name of I think it's like Bumper something. I did tag the business, and I tagged his name because he wrote it, and it was good. And it was about Apple reviews. It's a great piece. So maybe Denise, I'll get that to you after the fact so you can see that. But I tagged this guy. I don't even know him, but I'm seeing a whole bunch of people that are liking that post that I did. They are not in my circle of influence. So these people are seeing me because I tagged that other guy. So just want to make sure that that's clear. So I'm kind of going off on it. This is me getting my LinkedIn hat on. I'm going to take that off now. And let me just check to see if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, I'll talk a little bit more about vetting, finding the shows. Now that these are, so I just want to make this clear. These are all things for a person to look at when they are considering whether this is a high caliber show that you want to be on. And you take every one of them. I almost, you might put more weight on one thing than another, but never discount a show because they're weak in one area if they're strong in the others. Look at it as a, aggregate of all these different ways that a host and a show can show up to determine whether it's a valuable show or not. And then I do want to talk a little bit about listen notes, but let me just check in with you, Denise, to see if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I'm just trying not to get in your way, and I'm scribbling notes like crazy. I mean, I know much of what you're talking about, but then you'll say something, I go, ooh, and I have to put my other hat on. Am I a guest right now? Am I a podcast host? And,
Yeah,
okay, take that hat off, put this one on.
yeah.
But the thing is, and you said something very important. I had an inquiry 2 days ago, I think it was, from somebody who wanted to come on my show about a topic I have zero interest in, zero. But I went and looked, and they've only got 5 episodes, but they sounded fascinating for somebody else. So I
Mm-hmm.
then, wrote a quick blog post yesterday, I think it was, about, listen, you may not be the ideal guest for me, and I
Right.
will tell you, and I never ever, well, one time recently, I ignored one person. We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
And you actually made me think differently about it, but I'm still not inviting on the
That's,
show. Ain't gonna
that's
happen,
okay.
huh? As
I
we
play the
say.
devil's advocate everywhere I go,
You
so I
did. It
like
was
to
like,
get people pondering.
yeah, okay, I never looked at it that way. I still don't want him on the show, but that's now I'm not nearly as aggravated as I was. But I looked at these guys and you know, fascinating conversation they could have with somebody who is interested in crypto. I'm not.
Oh,
It's not
yeah,
in my field. It's not in my wheelhouse.
right.
So my point for writing this blog was, listen, the worst thing, in my opinion, a host can do is just say no and not
Hmm.
tell you why no, or just delete it and ignore it. That listen, you went to a lot of trouble to find me.
Yeah,
I need to respond. So my point here, and I'm getting to it, honest I am,
yeah.
is that instead of me just saying, well, no, thank you, it's not a good fit, I will say, listen, I may have, and a lot of times these things will come from agencies.
Hmm.
I never introduce my guests to another podcast host without involving the agency.
Hmm.
That's your
Thank you
client,
for that.
not mine. It's just that's how you do it. But I responded and said, listen, I cannot, this is not my wheelhouse, but I may have other high value podcast hosts that I'm aware of. May I introduce you to them? And they said, oh, yes, please. That's the
Hmm.
polite thing to do. It's the right thing to
Absolutely.
do. So I'm off my soapbox now.
That's beautiful. Thank you. No, I love that you do that. And that is something that if a person, if you get a response from a host and it's a kind response and you feel like that host would not be terribly annoyed, it's not a bad thing afterwards when they decline to thank them again and kind of leave it with, I completely understand and I honor and respect you for, making this decision, but if you can please keep me in mind if you happen to know of anyone else that you feel I might be a good
Right.
fit for, I would appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I always recommend that people leave it with that. And we've talked about that even with this speaking world when they get declines, to always leave it with who might you know, because event planners know event planners, podcast hosts know podcast hosts. Many of your guests that you've had, I'm sure, are hosts themselves. So there, because people do both, right? They do hosting and guesting. So you never know where that might lead. And even if the host doesn't know anybody at that time, it could literally be 1 week later that they meet someone that would be a perfect fit. So we always want to have that. And that's why the relationship is important. Again, that's only going to work if you reach out in a way that is a blessing. It is very hard, I will say, as an agent. It's very frustrating when a show does not respond. And I get it because they're so busy. But I also will say that they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot because I'm pretty tenacious and I will dig in like an Alabama tick until I get an answer. So if I don't get a response, I give them, a couple of weeks and then I'll reach out to them again very nicely. I don't want to be annoying. And this is all things I want everybody here to hear. Okay? Because if you don't get a response, number one, it does not mean it's a no. I will tell you, I do this every single day. Okay, so I'm telling you from my own experience, a no response does not mean a no to you necessarily. You want to circle back and have a system to circle back. Make a note. Like I personally use the tool Todoist. It's TOD, like David, OIST. That's an add-on that I've got. I pay a small fee, I don't know, 27 bucks a year or something. I'm not sure. I love that as a way for me to track my reach outs. So when I do an email to a show, I then will immediately add it to my Todoist. And I usually add anywhere from like a 10 to a 14-day period in there where it will then pop up with the email that is now like, okay, I didn't get a response. So I'll take that email and then I will basically reply to that email. So it goes to the host again. And I'll just graciously say, hey, I'm circling back. I'm not trying to be annoying, but I don't know if it landed in your inbox to begin with because emails go astray sometimes. Or is it possible that I reached you at a time where you were not able to consider my client or myself as a potential guest? It's totally okay to decline. We feel that we're in alignment, as I explained in the previous email. But if you're not feeling it, please just let me know because the last thing I want to do is fill up your inbox. But please understand from my viewpoint, I don't know if you received it. And the majority of the time, when I do that a second time, I'll usually get a response. If I don't, that's where I'm getting creative on the side through LinkedIn. Or maybe there's someone that I know who is connected to that person and I can reach out to them and say, hey, is there any way you could check in with this person? I have found there were times when it literally was ending up in their spam or it just was blocked altogether and they didn't get it. And how do I know, right? So you want to be gracious. You don't want to be annoying, but you kind of want to plant that seed with the host that I don't know if you're getting it, so I'm going to keep trying. Now, there does come a point where you have to cut bait. Okay, because now it's no longer a good ROI for you to keep chasing down that path. But I just want people to be aware that sometimes things do go wrong and they don't get through. Other times, the host may come back and they're saying, I'm so glad you circled back. Yes, this is perfect. I'd love to have this guest. I just didn't get a chance to respond to you earlier. Or they might come back and they say, I do my show in seasons and my season is already wrapped up. So sorry, but no. Then I'll usually come back and I'll say, well, okay, are you saying no to my client? Are you saying no to me as a guest? Or could I possibly circle back with you later? And if so, when would that be a good time? And then again, you can use some type of tool, or it could be a spreadsheet or just chicken scratch notes, whatever. Calendar it, task it. And maybe they say, you know what, I'm just booked up until April and I can't even think right now. Oh boy, do I get that. So I say, great, I'll just circle back in April. And then when I come back to them in April, I am so nice. And by then, the majority of the time, they'll say yes. but sometimes they might say no, and it's okay. So just be tenacious and gracious at the same time when you're reaching out. Now, I would love to talk when I am searching shows. So there's ways to search for shows, and we talked a little bit more about this with having your definite avatar, that the ultimate person you want to get in front of, having that clarity, thinking about what words, keywords they might use when they are researching a potential show that they might want to listen to. You can use those keywords in a search. Another thing that I highly recommend is finding someone that you are aligned with, another person that's in your industry, perhaps, and they are doing podcast guesting, or they at least are speaking to your same avatar. They might be in an adjacent industry, but still speaking to the same type of people. So be paying attention to the people that you know, or the people that are showing up that you know that you're kind of in alignment with, and you can search to see what podcasts they have been on. And this is one of the best ways to create a hit list, because first off, if they have been on a show, you know the show has guests. Okay. And that's one of the first things to look for when you are vetting shows. No matter where you are looking for it, one of the first things I do is I go to that Apple Podcast page, and the first thing I do is I look to see when the most recent episode was, because pod fade, basically podcasts going under, is a real thing. The majority of the whatever, more than 3 million podcasts that they say are out there, the majority of them are dead shows. And it's so easy to overlook that and get excited about a podcast and propose yourself, and they haven't aired an episode in 3 months or maybe longer. So you want to make sure that it's an active show. Another thing, by the way, when you're vetting a show, pay attention to their consistency. If you see that it's really like all over the place as far as when they air their episodes, that is a bit of a red flag about the show. Now, I know that there are some hosts out there that they just do podcasts when they feel like it, do an episode when they feel like it, and that's okay. And I'm not dissing that. This is just one more thing to be looking at when you are vetting a show. Are they consistent? So that's important. Number one, is it current? Number two, do they have guests? Okay. There's nothing worse than having a host be approached by someone offering themselves and it's clearly a solo show. Another thing, pay attention to how often their show is out there. If they only do one episode per month, that means that they only have the potential of 12 guests out of an entire year. You want to keep that in mind when you're looking at your ROI. Even, even though you're not having to pay to be on a show, it is still your time. It's your time to do the research and the reach out. So always be looking at what's the potential ROI? What's the likelihood of this show saying yes to me if they only have 12 spots a year? Pay attention to whether the show has a combo of solo and guest episodes, because many shows do that. They might do 3 solo shows and 1 guest, or vice versa. Be aware of these things also when you are doing that first reach out. Mention those things. You can say, I fully recognize that you only have 12 spots a year because you are only doing this on a monthly basis, but I really do feel what I have to share with your listeners would be of value. Here's why. Let them know that. Let them know that that it's mostly a solo show, but they have 1 guest a month. That, and again, is a cue to that host that you have done your due diligence. Now, the other thing that you can look at when you are reviewing these shows is the people that are showing up. So if it's a show that you're aligned with, you can also look at those guests. And if any of those guests are someone that you really feel confident that you would be in alignment with them, or the host too, because a lot of hosts are out there guesting as well, then you can research the episodes that they've been on. My favorite tool is Listen Notes. And I know, Denise, you've talked about that because you're currently ranking at the 2% rating of the global ranking within Listen Notes. So if you go to listennotes.com, you do not have to have a paid, subscription. If you do, you get a lot more bells and whistles. But when you go in there, you can do a search for podcasts. You can do a search for episodes. There's this line where you can put in keywords. You can put in people's names. If you are searching for a person, do put quotation marks around their name. That's going to help narrow down the amount of hits that come back to you. And then you can look at those shows. Now, on Listen Notes, right off the bat, when you first find a show that that other person has been on, you want to look at the Apple Podcast to make sure it's current. Okay, because Listen Notes is going to be sharing episodes from shows that may be dead. So you've got to pay attention to that. Just because they're coming up does not mean that it's an active show. So look to make sure it's active and look to make sure that they still have guests. So even though I said it's a good indication if someone's been on a show that they have guests, does not mean that they're still doing it, because some shows will start with guests and then they go solo. So you just want to pay attention to that. So you can do that search. Off on the right-hand side to the lower right, Listen Notes will also come up with comparable shows. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because Listen Notes is going to be looking at things like keywords, etc., but it's not thinking like we think at all. So there was a time I was looking for exit strategy. Those are the keywords that I was using because I had a potential client and I wanted to make certain I could get him on enough shows to warrant me representing him. And he helps people in business with their exit strategy. Boy, oh boy, did other shows come up related to exit strategy, including how to leave your life.
Ouch. I knew you
Okay.
would go there. How do I work
So
with my wife?
there,
That kind of thing.
yeah. So be careful. It's just picking out keywords and throwing them there. So it may or may not be a good fit. I also want to share the reality. Okay. This is the reality. Really, really big shows generally are not open to submissions from agencies or strangers. The really big shows are getting their guests organically, or maybe they're paying, the people have to pay to be on their show. Okay. Time and time and time again, people, they come to me and they have such a passion and they really know, their industry like the back of their hand, and they know that they're changing lives and they're good at it. They're a great speaker. Maybe they've even gotten paid a lot of money to speak, and they think that they can get on any show. Like, I want to be on Oprah. I want to be with Brene Brown. I want to be with Joe Rogan. I want to be with John Lee Dumas. And I'm like, wake up, smell the hummus. This is not going to be realistic to think that if you are not a celebrity, and if you don't have like this presence, which you will build over time, by the way, you're going to be able to get to those types of shows down the road when you have established your credibility and you've got an incredible digital footprint about being a guest or speaker, right? But you're not going to start out that way. So what I want to say is about the Listen Notes, the percentages and the rankings. So Listen Notes has two rankings. One is a Listen Notes score from 0 to 100. The higher the number, the better valued, if you will, the show is. Okay. Then to the right of that, they have the global ranking, and that is a percentage. Now, if you click on either one of those, they come up with a box that describes what those two boxes indicate. And it will say in the global ranking, like Denise, it'll say, this show is ranked 2% in the 3.2789 whatever million podcasts that are out there. But remember, as we were talking about earlier in this episode, Denise, half of them are dead. Okay, they're not active shows. The numbers are not realistic. There's no accurate numbers anywhere. I don't know where Listen Notes gets this or what this algorithm is based on as to how they determine that you are in the 2% ranking, because it's a mishmash out there to begin with.
It
Now,
is. It really is.
so
Listen, I started at 5% when somebody said, "Hey, do you see that you're on Listen Notes?" And I said, "What's Listen Notes?" I had no
right.
clue. Then I went to 2.5%. I was like, "Woohoo." Then I went to 2%. I was like, "Now I have to go to 1.
Uh,
Crap."
well, you're going to go to 1.5 first. So here's the thing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I see things differently because I'm an agent and I'm in the middle and I'm in Listen Notes literally every single day. So here's the truth about Listen Notes. You are not actually in the top 2% of every single show that's out there, okay, because that's not a realistic number. But it is an indication that this is a highly ranked show. And I can tell you that because of my experience. So here's the crazy thing and why I know that that number is not accurate. The reason I know that number is not accurate is that when a person appears on Listen Notes for the first time, okay, and Listen Notes finds the shows out there. And by the way, if to anyone who is a host, please claim your show on Listen Notes. There's a
Yeah.
little blue check mark, and it takes nothing to do that. When you find your show on Listen Notes, go in there, and there is this your show? Claim it. Claim it. It takes nothing to do that. And I don't know, I can't tell you this for sure, but I have to think that maybe there's something that it captures the attention of Listen Notes when you do that. So, and hopefully that will help. So claim it. Then what will happen is that you'll see shows that they may not have any ranking at all. It's just not showing anything. And then whatever magic happens in the Listen Notes universe, it will start out at a 10%. So you'll have nothing, and then all of a sudden you're 10%. Now I'm certain at some point we're at 10%, but you just didn't know about Listen Notes, so you never saw it.
No,
It was
that's it.
brought to your attention when you dropped down to 5%. Here's the reason why I know it's not accurate, is because there is nothing between 10 and 5%. In fact,
I
there's
haven't noticed.
how can a brand new show,
I
how
know.
can Listen Notes say a brand new show that's showing up at 10% is 10% in all the podcasts that are out there? Why not like 17.3%? Okay, so
Exactly.
you start at
But
10.
and we're running out of time, so I
Oh,
have
okay.
but to get back to an earlier point, it is a highly ranked show, no matter if it's 2%,
It is.
18%, it is still. So I use it. I'm proud of
And
it.
no, and you
I
should.
know it's not accurate.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm in it every day. Okay, a 10% show is a show, and it doesn't mean anything one way or the other. If you get to 5%, then that host is doing something right. They're doing something right, whether it be through Apple reviews, sharing it socially, having a big digital footprint. The smaller the show, the number, the better. But what I can tell you is that 2% is a really good show because I
It is.
compare show to show. I know that the number's not accurate in the world of all the millions of podcasts, but I know it's accurate to compare apples to apples. So 2% is a great ranking, and you're going to be at 1.5% very soon because of what I'm seeing you doing. And then you're going to be at 1%. And then it goes down to 0.5. Like I watch the way I know how the numbers jump. So actually there is a 3%, but I think you just skipped that. So
Think so.
yeah, no, this is awesome. I love this and it is accurate. So people just use that, use Listen Notes, find the shows, vet them, use people that you are aligned with to create a hit list and go down that rabbit hole. And even a show that they've been on, you could look at the guests of that show and find the shows that they've been on, and you just keep going and then you just build it. And next thing you know, you've got these great shows to reach out to. And we've already talked about how to reach out to them in a way that they're going to be interested in you because it's been compelling and you're sharing what's in it for them.
And I have to tell you, it's a little bit off the topic that we're currently talking about, but one of my favorite ways to get guests is because my guests refer other people. They're like, oh, I had one guest, bless him, I've never gotten over this. This was several years ago, and I got an email said, Denise, I've got some people I would love to refer to you to be a guest. Would you mind? I said, not at all. 12 people in one email. He was dead serious
Oh,
about introducing me to people, and I interviewed all but one.
wow.
So, when my guests say, "Oh, I would love to introduce you to," come on, bring it. I would love to hear from you.
They're pre-qualified.
They are pre-qualified. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, we are just about to get cut off here. So thank you. I love chatting with you because you are such is it font or fount of wisdom?
Fountain, I think it's
Well,
well,
I can spell it, but anyway, but
now, yeah, now I'm confused. I'm
I
doubting
know
it now.
we're gonna have to go font fount, whichever. Kind of like niche. I'm in the South. We can say whatever we feel like saying.
Tomato, tomato.
Tomato, y'all, that kind of thing. But before I let you go, tell people where they can find you. I know you talk a lot about LinkedIn. Is there any other thing that you want our audience to know before I cut you loose?
Thank you. I really, really, really appreciate that. And thank you again for just having me twice. I'm so enjoying this. It was such an honor to be here today. And to anyone who is still listening, thank you for being with us. This means that you must be all in with this subject. And I truly wish you the best. I love to be able to support people with this. So, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please introduce yourself so I know it's not someone just trying to sell me something. And I'm far more likely to accept your request to connect because I do love to do that. But I do have a simple page. If you just go to my website, which is accessspeakers.biz, B-I-Z, /thank you. That's it. Go there. All my info's there. But in there also, you can get a free ebook that I have. And also, if you reach out, I'm happy to offer a 15 to 20-minute consultation for free. This is just an opportunity for me to be able to look at you and kind of have a sense for how you're showing up and be able to make some recommendations to you so that you can maybe, have a better presence out there and increase the likelihood of you either getting booked or being more effective at it. So take advantage of me offering my time. I love to do it. I love to support people. Just reach out and find me at that thank you page. And I know that it will be in Denise's show notes as well.
It is, and thank you for making that offer. It's important. Not everybody can afford to hire you or hire me, but anytime we can, get somebody's attention to just ask a question or two and then run with
Yeah.
that is such a gift. So to the audience, as we conclude today's episode, your feedback really means a lot to me. And if you found the show helpful, please support us with a quick review on iTunes. Your input is vital in my mission to inspire and empower more individuals. So don't forget to hit, and I said iTunes, it could be Apple, we don't know. But anyway, you know where to go. Yes. So
The purple one.
yeah, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a review, and share your Partner in Success Radio with friends and colleagues. And be sure to go find Anastasia Lipske on the web and connect with her. Thank you for tuning in. And again, thank you so much for being my guest. You have been amazing.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, truly.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffiths at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.